Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel and to highlights of the Brabantse Pijl 2021. I can't wait to bring this video to you. Alaphilippe won this race last year, MVDP the year before, Sagan, Wellens, they've won this race. It's a blend between an Ardennes classic and a cobbled classic, 201 kilometers, featuring numerous cobbled climbs with 4 laps around a tough circuit in Rouge. Wout van Aert, Trentin, Pidcock, Cosnefroy were all in attendance. A pretty strong breakaway went up the road with 80 Ks with a 4-minute 20 gap to the peloton, with Liege-Bastogne, the young rider for DSM, Rabeat for Bingoal. And in these sort of races, and we've seen this a lot this season, the break is never truly brought back. Instead, riders just try and slip away and bridge across to the break once they get close enough. Remy Cavagna for Quickstep, Bistrom, Tom Schkerns and Rob Stannard for Bike Exchange trying to bridge across to this group, who only had about a 30-second lead on those 4 riders chasing with 50 kilometers to go. Jumbo-Visma were chasing behind for their leader Wout van Aert, Ineos poised behind with Golash and Rouge for Tom Pidcock, their leader, and they were nearly a minute from this lead group with Liege-Bastogne kicking on before the first big moment of this race happened with, I think, about 40 kilometers to go before the second to last descent of the Herzstraat. The EF rider touches the back wheel of the Ineos rider, causes a massive crash at fairly high speed, and for the race situation it meant 1, 2, 3, 4 Quickstep riders were caught up in that crash. So that meant that Quickstep's only card to play now in this race was Cavagna up the road, and just after that crash they hit the Herzstraat and Pidcock attacked really hard with Trentin barely holding his wheel behind. They were 53 seconds behind the main breakaway group. Cavagna in the Schkerns group is somewhere in the middle, about 20 seconds behind. Wout van Aert having to bridge on his own on that climb, with Pidcock still accelerating after the crest. The first group with Liege-Bastogne now being brought back by the Cavagna, Cosnefroy, Schkerns and Rabeat group, and just behind them were the top 3 contenders about to bridge across before the second to last ascent to the Moskowstraat. Pidcock working really hard in this group, having initiated the split, but they didn't get to the front of that group before that climb. You can see those 3, they've just bridged across. They're at the back of this group as they hit this cobble climb. It narrows. You've got Schkerns and Cosnefroy at the front, and this is the start of a dangerous 10-minute period for Tom Pidcock. He's just done a massive effort bridging across, creating that split. As I said, you can see him here losing touch to the wheel of Van Moer and Van Aert, with Cosnefroy really accelerating at the front of this group, Cavagna barely holding his wheel. Cosnefroy, he came 3rd in this race last year. He's one of the best punchers in the world, did well at Fleche as well. He's a serious rider, just came back from a knee injury, and he kicked out again after the Moskowstraat, with Trentin and Van Aert doing their best to try and catch back onto him. But because of this Cosnefroy action after the Moskowstraat, maybe Pidcock was tired after the bridge, or he was just out of position, but he's now not in this group, and Wout van Aert is on the front pulling really hard. I'm not sure if Van Aert knew that Pidcock wasn't in the group. He probably knew over the team radio that he was in some sort of difficulty. Trentin loses Van Aert's wheel, hoping someone pulls it back, but he realizes he has to close it himself. And now you can just see on the left-hand side of this image, behind the moto, Tom Pidcock having to bridge back to this group on his own, basically pulling head-to-head against Wout van Aert. But he is able to get back into contention with this group with 30 Ks to go, and Trentin, a really smart counter-attack once he is back in that group. Stannard and Wout van Aert looking for other people to close. It is a great time to attack for Trentin. No one in the group has any teammates. Van Aert has just pulled, and everyone's going to be looking at Wout van Aert to close this gap, which got out to 15 to 17 seconds. Everyone's leaning on Wout van Aert. He's been getting this season in the classics, and it started last year, the Peter Sagan treatment. That's why it's so hard to win these races when you are the out-and-out favourite. Although Pidcock was willing to work with Wout van Aert, he even pulled a double turn, making sure he was in the first few wheels going into the last ascent of the Herzstraat with 16 Ks to go. Wout van Aert is out of position. He's not on Pidcock's wheel, and he creates a big problem for Wout van Aert here as Rob Stannard loses his wheel in the gutter as well as Ida Schelling. But once again, Wout van Aert is having to bridge across to Tom Pidcock's wheel on the Herzstraat on his own, which he's able to do, but all of these things add up, they cost energy, and this is how Tom Pidcock wants to race. He wants to dictate the pace himself. It probably cost him at Flanders, where he ran out of steam, but he put Van Aert under a lot of pressure here. There's no Alaphilippe or MVDP to worry about. Trentin knew they were coming, he said afterwards, so he sat up trying to conserve energy and then sat on them for a couple of kilometers whilst Wout van Aert and Pidcock pulled to extend that gap out to the chasing group. They reached the Moskowstraat because throughout the last ascent of this cobbled climb, with some steep sections, Trentin goes around the outside. He knows that Wout van Aert is probably going to accelerate in the saddle and try and attack him and Pidcock. Pidcock, this is the same climb where he had difficulties with about 32 k's to go, and he just manages to cling on here. Turns and Cosnefroy had obviously eaten into that gap. They were only 6 seconds behind, but just ran out of energy in the last couple of 100 meters of the climb, and then they get into this flatter section before the last couple of climbs, which aren't too bad. They're in ones and twos, Cosnefroy and turns. No one's got teammates. Everyone's exhausted. And so this 8-second gap with 8 k's to go balloons out to 30 seconds with 4.5 k's. And the question now was, would they back their sprint? Obviously Wout van Aert will. Trentin, I'm not so sure. He has beaten Wout van Aert in a sprint before. Pidcock, he's got a really good sprint. Third in Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne. Van Aert and Trentin know that, so they all go to the last 1500 meters together. The finale is not particularly steep. It's no Murderhoy, the S-Box. This is a different finale to normal because of roadworks, I think. And Pidcock and Trentin do exactly the right thing. They say, Van Aert, you're the favourite. You're the best sprinter on paper. They put him on the front to set pace on this climb. But Van Aert doesn't really set a very high pace. And eventually, they pretty much start track standing on this climb whilst the GOAT, Benoit Cosnefroy, is back chasing them. And then we're thinking now, have they stuffed it in front, the trio, with their cat and mousing? Is it going to be an MVDP Amstel Gold scenario? Eventually Trentin blinks first and goes back on the front to lead out Pidcock and Wout van Aert. Trentin ups the speed on the flatter section on the front. Wout van Aert jumps first with over 200 meters to go. Pidcock managing to get into his slipstream. He disappears for a moment on the barriers and then jumps back out with 100 meters to go, absolutely dusting Wout van Aert off in this sprint. A masterful performance from Tom Pidcock, taking his first professional win, and a few things played into his favour. First, different finish. They don't have the corner in the last 250 meters like they did last year, where Alaphilippe boxed in MVDP and then posted up and nearly lost. This was after Liege, by the way, absolute madman. This was a dangerous moment for Pidcock because Wout van Aert could box him in if he keeps him behind Trentin. The difference was this was so far out from the finish and there's so much space to the right-hand side, as well as Wout van Aert doesn't really keep him boxed. He blows past Matteo Trentin, and then the second thing that goes right for Pidcock is that Trentin immediately yields Wout van Aert's wheel. Pidcock can get that big slipstream advantage, even for 25, 30 meters from Wout van Aert, and then slingshot past him. This with 100 meters to go, destroyed him. Comment down below, how surprised were you that Tom Pidcock beat Van Aert in this sprint? We saw Askren, the underdog, win the sprint against MVDP in Tour of Flanders, and I think the big takeaways from those two races is the riders that look the strongest, creating splits on the previous climbs throughout the day, putting other riders into difficulty, shouldn't be underestimated in the final sprint, even if they aren't the favourite on paper. And I don't think this is the last we're going to see of Tom Pidcock sitting on the hot seat after winning a classic. If you want to support the channel so I can go out and get more current races to show you, you can join channel membership through the join button down below, or simply just like the video. But I'll see you this weekend. Ciao.